All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring the world of AI image generators. Specifically, we're going to be looking at how to control these things, how to make them create what we want. And let me tell you, the research is really quite fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. The progress in this area has been remarkable.
Yeah. We're going to be focusing on a paper called Steering Rectified Flow Models in the Vector Field. I know, it's a mouthful. But trust me, the concepts are much cooler than the title might suggest. It's all about this new technique they're calling Flow Chef.
Right. FlowChef is really pushing the boundaries of what we can do with these models.
Okay, so before we get too deep into Flow Chef, we need to understand what these rectified flow models or RFMs are all about. Basically, we're talking about generating images in seconds, really detailed, intricate images, and incredibly fast.
And the speed is really one of the most interesting things about them. It all comes down to how RFMs work. They navigate through what's called a vector field. You start with just random noise, and then they refine that noise until it becomes a recognizable image.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. So how does this vector field work? I mean, what is it exactly?
Think of it like a map, like a really detailed wind map.
Mm.
But instead of showing wind direction, each point on the map has an arrow, and that arrow guides the formation of the pixels in the image.
Oh,
So
okay.
the RFM, it starts with this completely chaotic image, basically just a bunch of random pixels. And then it follows those arrows. It uses those arrows to refine the pixels until eventually we get a coherent image.
So each pixel is kind of being nudged along a specific path, and
Mm,
they're all working together to create the final picture.
exactly.
That's amazing. And where does FlowChef fit into all of this?
FlowChef is, well, it's like the tool that lets us manipulate those arrows. Instead of letting the RFM just follow the preset path, FlowChef lets us reach in and tweak those directions. It allows us to guide the image generation process.
So we can reach into this vector field and actually change the currents to get the picture we want.
That's the idea. And the really cool part is that FlowChef does all of this without requiring massive computing power or super complex calculations.
See, that's what I find so interesting about this. Because, we've talked about how we needed really advanced hardware even to try to manipulate these AI images. So are you saying that this technique could make this process accessible to pretty much anyone with a decent computer?
It's definitely a big step in that direction. One of the most exciting things about FlowChef is that it could make this technology much more accessible to independent artists, developers, people who don't have access to huge computing resources.
Wow, that's a big deal. So how does it manage to pull that off? I mean, what's the secret behind it?
It's all based on something called gradient skipping.
Gradient skipping. Okay, I have no idea what that is.
So most AI models, they learn and adapt by making small adjustments based on what we call gradients. You can think of gradients as little signs that tell the AI which way to go, which direction it needs to adjust its internal settings to improve its performance on a specific task. It's like the AI is trying to get through a really complex maze, and these gradients are like the little arrows pointing it towards the exit.
Okay, so the AI is constantly learning and adjusting based on this feedback it's getting from these gradients.
Exactly. But calculating those gradients can take a lot of computing power, especially with these really powerful models like the RFMs we're talking about.
So FlowChef kind of bypasses that somehow.
Yes, it's like it takes a shortcut through the maze.
Oh, okay.
It takes advantage of the way RFMs are structured to find and focus on only the most crucial gradients for steering the image generation. It skips over all the unnecessary steps and calculations.
So instead of trying to figure out the whole maze, it just looks for the key junctions that really matter.
Exactly. That's why it's so
Yeah.
efficient. It can get the same level of control as previous methods, but using a fraction of the computing power.
This is fascinating stuff, but let's talk about what we can actually do with FlowChef. What kind of real-world applications are we talking about?
Well, one area where FlowChef really shines is in what we call linear inverse problems. Think about things like taking a blurry image and making it sharp, or upscaling a low-resolution image to make it bigger, or even filling in missing parts of an image, which is called inpainting.
Wow, so it's like having the super-powered image restoration tool at your fingertips.
You got it. And it can do all of this much faster than anything we had before.
Hmm.
The research shows FlowChef can do in seconds what would take minutes using conventional methods.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential here. What else can we do with it?
It can also do some really cool stuff with image editing. Like, let's say you have an image and you want to change it based on a text prompt. Something like, add a hat to this person or make this landscape more forested. FlowChef can handle that. And it does it without needing to go through this whole complex process called inversion, which means it's way faster and it uses less memory.
So it's like having this AI assistant that can understand what you want to do with the image and then just make it happen.
Exactly. And there's more. It can even handle style transfer.
Wait, remind me, what's style transfer again?
Oh, it's where you take an image and you make it look like it was painted by a certain artist or done in a specific style. And it can do all of this while also following a text prompt that you give it.
So I could take like a picture of my dog and make it look like a Picasso painting.
Exactly. It's a really powerful tool for creative expression. And the paper actually shows some pretty impressive examples of what FlowChef can do. They talk about using it to add glasses to faces and even to edit multiple objects in a single image.
That's wild. But I have to ask, are there any limitations to FlowChef? I mean, no technology is perfect, right?
Well, you're right. There are some limitations. For one thing, right now, FlowChef often needs what's called a mask to be provided by a human. Basically, someone has to tell the AI exactly which part of the image they want to change.
Uh, so it still needs a bit of human guidance. It's not quite ready to replace human artists just yet.
Not entirely. And another thing the researchers point out is that FlowChef can sometimes run into problems with what they call nonlinear trajectories in certain models. Basically, this means that sometimes the AI's path from random noise to the final image isn't so straightforward, which can make it a bit harder to control.
Okay, so it sounds like there are still a few kinks to work out. But overall, it seems like FlowChef is a huge step forward for AI image generation. I think it would be helpful to go back to the idea of this vector field for a second. You explained it earlier with the wind map analogy, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this actually works in practice.
Okay, let's try a different analogy. Instead of a wind map, imagine a giant space, like a huge room, filled with these tiny arrows. Each arrow represents a direction and a force. This is our vector field. And now imagine dropping a tiny particle into this room. That particle will start moving, following the arrows, being pushed and pulled by the forces in this space.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see it, but how does this relate to creating an image?
So in the case of RFMs, that tiny particle represents the very beginning of the image. It's just a random collection of pixels, pure visual noise. And the vector field that we're talking about, it represents the AI's knowledge of images based on all the data it's been trained on.
So the AI has learned how pixels should be arranged to form images that make sense to us, and it's stored that knowledge in this vector field. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. It's quite remarkable. As that particle of noise travels through the vector field, it's constantly being nudged and guided by those tiny arrows, and gradually it transforms from pure randomness into a coherent image.
And the FlowChef technique allows us to manipulate those arrows, those forces, in a very specific way, right?
Exactly. It's as if we can reach into that space and adjust the currents, guiding that particle, that image, in the direction we want it to go.
That's an incredible level of control. It makes me wonder, what are the limits of this control? Can we really create any image we can imagine using this technique?
That's a question researchers are definitely exploring, and there are certainly still some constraints. FlowChef works best when the edits we want to make are relatively simple, like adding an object or changing a color.
But what about more complex manipulations? Like, could I take a picture of a car and turn it into a spaceship using FlowChef?
That's where things get a bit more challenging. Even with FlowChef, AI models are still limited by the data they've been trained on. They can only generate images that are consistent with what they've seen before.
So if the AI has never encountered a car-spaceship hybrid before, it's probably not going to be very good at creating one.
Right. But even with these limitations, the level of control that FlowChef offers is a huge advancement. And as AI models become more sophisticated and are trained on even larger and more diverse data sets, we can expect the boundaries of what's possible to keep expanding.
I can't help but think about the ethical implications of this technology. We're talking about a tool that can manipulate images with a level of precision we've never seen before. Doesn't that open the door for misuse, like creating deepfakes or spreading misinformation?
That's definitely an important consideration, and it's something that researchers and developers in this field are very much aware of. As with any powerful technology, there's always the potential for misuse. That's why it's crucial to develop safeguards and ethical guidelines alongside these technological advancements.
So what kind of safeguards are we talking about? Can we even tell if an image has been manipulated using AI?
That's an area where there's a lot of active research right now. There's been a lot of work done in developing tools that can detect AI-generated images or videos. It's a constant effort to stay ahead of those who might try to misuse these tools.
It sounds like a bit of an arms race.
In a way, it is, but it's essential that we continue to develop robust methods for identifying manipulated content if we want to ensure the responsible use of this technology.
Another concern I have is about the impact this technology could have on human creativity. If AI can create art and design so easily, does that mean human artists and designers will become obsolete?
That's a really complex question, and I think there are different viewpoints on it. Personally, I don't think AI will replace human artists. I see it more as a tool, like a paintbrush or a camera.
So it's not about replacement, but about augmentation, using AI to enhance and expand human creative possibilities.
Exactly. AI can help artists and designers explore new ideas, break creative barriers, and create things they may not have been able to before. It's like giving them a whole new set of tools to play with.
I like that analogy. It's not about taking away from human creativity, but adding to it.
And we're already seeing artists and designers embrace AI in really innovative ways. It's exciting to think about what they'll come up with as this technology continues to develop.
You know, what strikes me is this idea of steering the AI. It almost feels like we're talking about guiding a living creature, not just manipulating a computer program. It's both fascinating and a bit unsettling.
It's a very interesting observation, and I think it speaks to the incredible power and complexity of these AI models.
Hmm.
They're not just simple algorithms anymore. They're capable of learning and adapting in ways that were unimaginable just a few years ago.
So, are we essentially entering into a kind of partnership with AI?
I think that's a very good way to describe it. It's a collaboration, a dynamic interplay between human creativity and AI's remarkable capabilities.
And that collaboration, as we've seen with FlowChef and other breakthroughs in AI image generation, has the potential to produce some truly amazing results.
Absolutely. We're really just at the beginning of this journey, and the possibilities are endless.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the technical intricacies of FlowChef to the broader implications of AI in art and society. Should we take a moment to recap the key points before we move on?
That sounds like a good idea. Let's give our listeners a chance to digest everything we've discussed so far.
So welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about AI image generation and this incredible new technique called FluChef.
We were, and I think we were just about to dig a little deeper into the technical side of how FlowChef actually works.
Right. You mentioned gradient skipping earlier. I got to be honest, I have no idea what that means.
Well, it's not magic, but it's definitely a clever technique. Most AI models, you see, they learn by making tiny adjustments to their settings. Think of them like knobs and dials inside the AI. And these adjustments are based on something called gradients. Gradients basically act like a guide. They tell the AI which way to turn those knobs and dials, which direction to adjust its settings to get better at whatever task it's doing.
So it's like the AI is constantly trying to improve itself, and those gradients are giving it feedback on how to do that.
Exactly. But calculating those gradients, well, that can be very computationally expensive. It takes a lot of processing power, especially with those really powerful models like the RFMs we've been talking about.
And that's where gradient skipping comes in.
Yeah, FluChef basically finds a way to simplify those calculations.
Okay.
It takes advantage of the structure of RFMs, you see. It can identify and target only the gradients that are really crucial for steering the image generation. It doesn't need to calculate gradients for every single thing in the model, just the important stuff.
So it's like finding the pressure points, the levers that really matter, and just ignoring everything else.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why it's so efficient. It can get the same level of control as those more resource-intensive methods, but without needing as much computing power.
So does this mean, practically speaking, that someone could use these sophisticated RFM models even if they don't have access to, like, a supercomputer?
Absolutely. That's one of the most exciting things about FlowChef. It could open up these powerful tools to a much wider audience: researchers, artists, developers, even just hobbyists who are interested in exploring this technology.
So we're talking about putting cutting-edge AI capabilities into the hands of, well, everyday people. That's pretty amazing.
It is. And it's exciting to think about all the possibilities for, innovation and creativity that this could unlock.
It makes me think about the potential impact on fields like art and design, even entertainment. Imagine being able to create these incredible visuals for movies or video games using this technology.
The applications are really, truly mind-boggling. We're already seeing AI being used in those industries, but FlowChef could really accelerate things. It could push the boundaries of what's possible.
It's like giving artists and designers a whole new set of superpowers. the ability to bring their ideas to life with a level of control and precision that we've never seen before.
Yeah, and it's not just about creating photorealistic images either. You can use FlowChef and RFMs to create abstract art, surreal art, explore all these different kinds of visual expression.
So we're not just talking about replicating reality, but about actually expanding the possibilities of what we consider visual art.
Exactly. It's a really exciting time to be working in this field. We're really just scratching the surface of what's possible with AI image generation.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of exploring that world today. We've covered a lot of ground, from the technical details of FlowChef to the bigger picture of what this means for art and society. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think the main thing to remember is that AI is a powerful tool, and it has the potential to be a really incredible tool for human creativity. It's not about replacing artists or designers, but about giving them new ways to express themselves, new ways to create.
Well said. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be inspired by what they've heard today to create the next big breakthrough in AI image generation.
I hope so. The future of this technology is really bright, and I can't wait to see what people come up with.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive, and we'll see you all next time.